How can you tell when a civilization is in danger of collapse? Well, that's easy. It's when every leader of every country that makes up Western civilization no longer accepts reality and deals only in lies and cowardice when presented with genuine danger. In the midst of worldwide Islamic violence, war, terror, torture and rape, we're told Islam is a religion of peace, over and over again. It's a sign of total cowardice to state Islam is peaceful, when it is undoubtedly an ideology of supremacism and war. Islam is the Quran is Muhammad, and Muhammad was a warlord and a murderer. Now, Mecca today is the international shrine to Muhammad, but it didn't used to be. First he had to defeat the Meccans when they laid siege to his exiled home in Medina. Muhammad won the battle and was then involved in the execution by beheading of 700 Jewish male members of Medina's Qurayza tribe. The women and children were taken as slaves and sex slaves, and beheading, as we now know only too well, seems a particular favourite amongst Muslim murderers, and this is because it's instructed in the Quran in any number of verses. Quran 5:33. The punishment of those who wage war against Allah and his messenger is execution by beheading or crucifixion, or the cutting off of hands and feet from opposite sides. Quran verse 8:12. I will instill terror into the hearts of the unbelievers, smite ye above their necks and smite all their fingertips off. Nice one. Quran 47:4. Therefore when ye meet the unbelievers, strike off their heads. So you see, Mr. Cameron, when Muslim murderers cut off soldiers' heads in London whilst quoting the Quran, it does, contrary to every lie that you've told, have everything to do with Islam. Now, David Cameron seems unaware that the perfect man in Muslims' eyes was a supremacist warlord, a murderer, and a sex enslaver of little girls. But then everything about Islam is supremacist. Islam translated means submission. Come on, what sort of a religion of peace calls itself submission? And what happens if you want to leave this religion of peace? You become an apostate, and the sentence for apostasy is death. So in other words, if you want to leave the religion of peace, you'll be killed. How peaceful is that, Mr. Cameron? Can't you see it? This religion of peace, this religion of Islam, kills its own women if they bring dishonour upon a family. Honour killings, honour violence, the stoning to death of adulteresses, the hanging of homosexuals. How can a religion which carries out these acts of savagery and barbarism possibly be considered a part of a peaceful religion? Again, I ask you the question, Mr. Cameron. Islam divides the world into two spheres, the area where Islam rules and the area where it does not. Now, the first is called the Dar al-Islam, which means the House of Islam, or the House of Submission, and the second is called the Dar al-Harb, which means the House of War. How many peaceful religions call areas they don't control the House of War, Mr. Cameron? All Western countries with large and growing Muslim populations find themselves, whether they like it or not, in the House of War, which is why, precisely why, our security services are engaged in a constant battle trying to stop the followers of the religion of peace blowing us up on trains, planes and buses. And good old Muhammad, he wasn't just a warlord, he was also a rapist and a sex slaver, which is exactly why we see rape and sex slavery happening today, and not just in Syria, but in towns and cities all across the West, wherever there are large numbers of Muslims. Notably Malmö in Sweden, which is now the rape capital of Europe, and the Islamic State, ISIS, Islamic State, is currently, right now today, selling sex slaves in Syria, as are Boko Haram in Nigeria, and Britain has recently passed a new sex slavery bill in an attempt to halt sex slavery in England, which is yet another aspect of cultural enrichment we are supposed to celebrate that we didn't used to have to do before Islam arrived on our shores. And the reason why modern-day Muslims rape young girls in Western countries is because they don't recognise non-Muslim or infidel laws anyway, but young girls are deemed sexually permissible to Muslims in England because their perfect man Muhammad married one of his wives, Aisha, when she was 6, and consummated the marriage when she was 9. But you don't consummate a marriage with a 9-year-old girl, you rape her. And the Muslim rape epidemic carried out against non-Muslim underage girls in Britain is specifically down to Muhammad and the Quran. And no doubt the next time such a story breaks in England, when the next Rotherham one comes around, David Cameron will come out and tell us that not only is Islam a religion of peace, it's also a religion of sexual abstinence and purity. Now come on, Mr. Cameron, enough of your lies and your cowardice. You really can't deny reality any longer. Islam poses the greatest threat to our civilization we have ever seen. And the history of Islam consists of centuries of war against us, against the West. And today the Muslim population is growing 9 times faster than any other demographic in Britain, and demographers are predicting a Muslim majority amongst the young before 2050. What do you think the country will look like then? Do you honestly think we can avoid a civil war when expansionist Islam is so warlike, so intolerant and so supremacist? And the thing is, this could be dealt with today, but to appease it, as you're doing, Mr. Cameron, hoping it will eat you last like Winston Churchill's crocodile, is a total betrayal of your country and a total betrayal of our children and grandchildren.